Miss Anjali Bansal, Miss Otara Gunewade, Miss Catherine Kaufman. Okay. And Justice Pratibha Singh, please.
All right. So good afternoon, and thank you for coming after lunch. I know, it's hard to keep an audience after lunch, especially, so I appreciate your presence, and I look forward to your active participation. My name is Sushan. I'm the Group Head of Consumer Banking and Wealth Management for DBS. I'm here with 4 fabulous women who will shortly introduce themselves straight into the topic. Let's launch then straight away. So, Catherine, you're going to tell us a little bit more about what new women's initiative you're doing for OPIC, but it might be worth you telling us a little bit more about OPIC first and what that organization does.
How's that? Wow, that was an introduction. We okay? Great. So thank you so much. I apologize. Thank you. Are we good now? All right, great. Thank you. My name's Catherine Kaufman, and I work at Overseas Private Investment Corporation, which, can you raise your hand if you've ever heard of it? Oh my gosh, this is a very unique audience. Most people have never heard of OPIC, but we are a $30 billion fund, the United States Government Development Finance Institution. And I'm really honored to be here and be on this panel today because we are launching a first ever women's initiative. So maybe I'll just talk about the women's initiative in the context of the overall OPIC mission. So as a development finance institution, OPIC's investments have 2 primary objectives, economic prosperity and global stability. And we believe that these objectives are directly linked to the status of women and girls around the world. So first, on economic prosperity, as everyone has talked about at this conference, it's so important that we keep talking about the scale of the opportunity. It's a $12 trillion opportunity. And the way I like to describe it is it's an emerging market the size of India and China combined. And that usually gets people interested. So I always try to talk about it as an opportunity. Because despite the fact that everyone sees this untapped market, still, on every global measure, women are more economically excluded than men. There's gaps in labor force participation, the $300 billion credit gap, and so at OPIC, our mission is to reduce these financial barriers so that women can fuel that economic prosperity and create the jobs that we know the emerging markets so desperately need. So that's economic prosperity. And then when we look at global stability, no surprise, women seem to be the linchpin in achieving our development goals as well. When women earn a competitive income, they spend 90% of it on their families, on their children's education, their aging parents' health care. They do so much in their communities, and by comparison, men spend between 30 and 40%. So it's no surprise that if we want to achieve our most pressing challenges, human trafficking, gender-based violence, education, healthcare, the most effective thing we can do is invest in women and empower women.
So I guess, this brings me to an interesting segue, and probably over to our next speaker, and we'll come back to you, Catherine, in a minute. And that is that, to your point, Catherine, my bank, DBS, together with Impact Investment Exchange, the IIX, together with USAID, Rockefeller Foundation, and Sherman Sterling, did our first women livelihood bonds earlier this year. In fact, only a few months ago in July. And we were delighted to see the success being put to good use. We're now going to empower some 385,000 women in ASEAN markets and emerging markets to help them, to create a livelihood, a sustainable livelihood. It was $8 million debt security at about 5.65% coupon over a 4-year period with a 50% capital guarantee from US aid. And hopefully this is a start. It wasn't a large sum, fairly modest sum, but I hope this is a start to create, you know, a capital market for such constructive and sustainable use. Which brings me to Anjali, our next speaker. Anjali is the former head of TPG, a large private equity fund here, and she brings a whole wealth of financial advice, financial expertise to the picture. Anjali, could you tell us a bit more about what you think you know, emerging markets and financial markets can do to help this cause?
Can you hear me? Okay. So I think I won't repeat what my co-panelists have shared about the importance of financing women in general, both for development as well as for entrepreneurship, and why that is important. I think across the world today we are seeing an absolute surge in promoting women-backed enterprises for all the right reasons. That said, and while there is support required, particularly at the grassroots level, and initiatives such as DBS and OPIC are most welcome, I think in the formal sector, so to speak, in the mainstreaming is quite important as well. I think it is important to recognize that women-backed enterprises can actually generate market returns and are fully mainstream. Women just need a hearing sometimes, a friendly investor ear. In societies that are not as conducive to promoting women in leadership, they need some doors open from time to time. But otherwise, I think women-backed enterprises can be fully competitive and successful. And I'm going to talk about one of them who's sitting here, Neha Motwani here at Fraternity, who's building a tremendous, terrific business, which she started a few years ago.
Did you invest in her?
Yes.
Oh, well done.
You've got to eat your cooking. Yeah. So yes, I did. And so I think when it comes to formal private equity has to play by a certain set of rules, which is we are first and foremost, generate returns for your investors. You know, that's a fiduciary statutory obligation. And we do so while investing behind women-led enterprises and women entrepreneurs. I'm in the process actually of now setting up a new platform that will help companies that are market-facing in India for the most part, men and women-backed, to scale up. So we talk a lot about Startup India, and some of you who attended the plenary yesterday would have heard about that as well. There's a lot of support for that. There's a startup ecosystem that has developed quite nicely over the last 15 years. I think it is time to create a scale-up ecosystem, so as to take smaller businesses that have scalable business models and really turbocharge them with capital, with business building support, and create large enterprises out of them. I'll pause, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more.
Very good. Thank you, Anjali. So this lovely lady on the left needs very little introduction. She's, you know, a real torchbearer for women in the legal profession. A justice, a judge, no less. I called her the judgess. And a real fighter and a real pioneer of intellectual property rights, and something that she holds very dear, and she feels that, you know, perhaps us women, business women, should really be more educated, especially in the world of legal jargon and how to protect our intellectual property. So over to you, Justice.
Hi, a very good afternoon to all of you. I know exactly how you all feel. This is the way I feel when I sit in court post-lunch. And the lawyers are going on arguing in front of us.
How do you stay awake?
That's exactly what I'm saying. So, coming to the profession of law and women, I think 15 or 20 years ago, someone told me, some girl said, I want to do law, her parents would think she's mad. But in India, we've seen a complete change in the last 15 to 20 years. And slowly and steadily, the numbers are increasing. And in the lowermost tier of entry in judiciary, it's the consensus across the country amongst all judges that more than 50% of the judges who are now recruited are women.
Really? 50?
Yes.
It's 10 though now, right?
More than 50% in the entry level.
In the entry level.
So
very good.
By the time this goes upwards, I think it's going to change. So at the High Court and the Supreme Court level, Supreme Court has had only 6 women judges in our 65 years. 65 years of independence, 70 years of independence.
One every 10 years.
In the High Court, we just have about 10%. About out of the 600 judges, 60 are women judges. But I think this is going to change, and by the time GES 2027 happens, I think there would be more than 25% women in the higher judiciary.
And the high courts. So
In the
20,
high
so
courts.
doubling
Yeah,
of
it
where
should
we are.
almost- But having said that, I think the most important statistic that I would like to place before all of you is that only 10% of the entire litigation filed in the country is filed by women. And I don't think that that's a very good number. Because I think, therefore, there's a need to create consciousness amongst women. Why should just 10% of the cases be filed by women? I'm sure there are more issues that affect women in a much larger way in the country. Though there are men who are manning the judiciary is very compassionate about women, their property rights, their right to abortion, divorce, matrimony, alimony, maintenance, custody. These are all cases where we've seen that the judiciary is very, very compassionate to women. I think, therefore, there is a greater need for women to know what their rights are, to know what their duties are, and then use the legal system. The legal system is very, very vibrant, and you will see a much, much more friendly, women-friendly judiciary as you access judiciary. So don't be afraid of approaching the courts, whether it's a commercial dispute, whether it's your personal dispute, it doesn't matter. The second thing I want to say is about innovation. I think women are very, very creative people. We are creative by nature. We are born creative. When we rear our children, we are creative. When we bring up our families, the way we handle problems. So we create a lot, whether it's weaving, whether it's knitting, whether it's creating a brand, whether it's innovating. I think all of you as entrepreneurs need to know that whenever you create something, please protect it. Whether it's a trademark, if you design a garment, go file a design application. It just costs you 5,000 rupees. But the rights that it gives you are very high. If you want to file a patent, the government has started a huge movement of providing facilitators for small and medium enterprises. So these facilitators are subsidized by the government. So you only need to pay the official fee for the patent office. And the professional fee for the lawyer is paid by the government. So these are available, these schemes are available, whether it's individual inventors, individual creators, individual designers. All of you should make use of the intellectual property system. Let me give you just two more statistics before I close off on this. There are 200,000 trademarks filed every year in India.
200,000.
200,000. And 80% of them belong to Indian businesses. And in patents, it's exactly the opposite. 50,000 patents filed every year, and 80% belong to foreign applicants. So it just proves that though we are innovative in our minds, we are not kind of cashing in on them. We need to file more patents, trademarks, designs, be more creative, spend a little bit of time understanding intellectual property, and it will go a long way in your business and in your entrepreneurial skills, because now IP is a capital asset in your balance sheet. You can encash it, you can get a loan on that. So if you have a good brand, you can actually get a loan based on your brand. That's what I want to say.
I wish my mother knew you, because she invented a pimple cream many, many years ago, which is being used by all the government hospitals in Singapore. And my teenage son now is very pimply, so we had to go and get him a tube, and my mom looked at it and said, "Oh my God, that's my recipe."
Oh.
And she had known it,
She
there's a
would have
5-year lag, right?
She would have been a billionaire.
She didn't know that, she could have, at the time, you don't know what you don't know. And I think this is what you're trying to do, is empower the women to know what they should know their rights, and to use it. So over to, last but not least, Miss Ottara, who is from Sri Lanka. So Ottara Gunawarden is the founder of Odell, a fabulous fashion company. You can see how fashionable she is, which she successfully created and sold off. And we had a little secret conversation about our secret love for dogs, or your not so secret love for dogs. She's rescued 80,000 street dogs. For that, I think she has. Thank you. And we were, she's sharing that she felt that education was key, and having been as a successful entrepreneur, she's been trying to give back on the social side as well. So Ottara, share with us maybe share your journey about how you created your business.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? Okay. So I'll tell you a little bit quickly about my journey. I started when I was about 22 or 23. I have a degree in biology. I have a complete love and passion for animals and the environment, which is why I have a biology degree. And I actually came back from America and I wanted to earn money to help rescue animals and protect wildlife and the environment. And that's why I started with getting garments and putting it in my car and selling through my car to my friends and family. And then I borrowed
Can we put $50, maybe much more, and then you do what you did?
That's what
and
I
then
wanna
you better invest in her.
And where the brand is concerned with what she just said, it is absolutely key because for me, a lot of my time was spent protecting the brand. The brand was called Odell because as it grew, people started, copying it and doing various takes of it, and it was a huge.
Did you IP
task.
it?
Yes.
Did you? Oh, you did.
In every category, every stage, and it was really important because really a lot of the value was from the brand. It was not only the assets and the whole concept and everything, but protecting the brand was really important. And so I think that's something
Great.
that we have to do.
So you've met all my wonderful speakers. Now let's change tack and let's talk about digital disruption and technology. Startup, India, lots of technology disrupting the world of business. Is tech an enabler? Is tech a leveler? And is tech going to change the world for women entrepreneurs? Who wants to start us off? Anjali, great.
I'm happy to. So I actually started my career and professional life as an engineer. It's one of my favorite soap boxes. Yes.
Great.
There's more girls in STEM. In fact, more people in STEM. I think the STEM education is a great toolkit to have. You can do whatever you wish with it in life, and that's actually, I got out of engineering pretty quickly. You can see the engineers did not like that. But I realized very quickly that I enjoy engineering and science. It's a great enabler, and technology is a great enabler, but that's not what I want to do with my life. So the reason I brought up this point is, Sushant, you said, is tech an enabler? I think absolutely. Is it going to
companies today that are saying, even heavy engineering companies that, like Justice Pratibha mentioned, that 50% of their engineering class has to be female. So imagine graduate engineer trainee in a mechanical engineering company, 50% female. That's a great goal, and I think there are companies like Wix that are actually accomplishing that goal. I think technology is
it used to be a vertical. Today, technology and digital is actually a horizontal.
Yeah.
It cuts across every aspect of an enterprise. Frankly, it cuts across every aspect of life. It's an enabler. It's a great leveler. It's a disruptor. But what is disrupted? What is a disruptor today becomes disrupted tomorrow. So technology is continuously evolving. So I don't think there is room in this world anymore for enterprises that don't appreciate what technology can do both as an offense and as a defense.
Yeah.
It's 100%, and I think because technology enables and digital channels enable faster, easier access and non-traditional channels of access to market, I think women entrepreneurs should take great advantage of that. Women tend to, I think, or at least there's a public perception that women are a little bit more technophobic, but need not be. I mean, there is, everyone doesn't have to go work on gas turbines and engines and so on. But what you have to do is to know how to use technology, particularly digital technology, to get past what have traditionally been barriers, whether it's an access to finance, it's an access to markets, access to people.
Angela, you're absolutely right. And speaking as a banker as well, I mean, in the past, large pools of capital were held in places like the US, Europe, maybe Hong Kong, Tokyo, Singapore. And the places that needed it most in emerging markets would have found it very hard to access these large pools of ready capital that were looking for a home. But today, with that digital infrastructure, this young man here has set up a digibank in India where you can open an account in 90 seconds, for example. Sorry, I'm plugging DBS Digibank for you here. But also, the fact that you can now move money around within seconds with a cheap smartphone, and when a company can get access to your data and make informed decisions on credit scoring you using non-traditional data, like a credit bureau, and decide, hey, this lady's a good credit. I like what I see. She's selling a lot more stuff on the internet. I can see her sales growth. I can see her trajectory. I can use AI to say this is going to be a good enterprise. Bang. I'll put money behind this. I'll lend her money, right? And she doesn't need to travel 100 miles to the nearest ATM or nearest bank manager. She gets it on her smartphone that costs her $50, hopefully, right? So that's, if that's not access, I don't know what is. Did you want to say something?
Sure, I will.
Yes, Catherine, pass the mic. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Is that okay?
No.
Sorry.
Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
thank you.
Yeah,
Okay, so Suchi did a nice job explaining just how impactful technology has been in fintech world, particularly for women in emerging markets. OPIC does a lot of investing in fintech, and we will continue to do so. But we're interested in other sectors where technology can provide a leapfrog for female participation. We're looking at ag tech, med tech, ed tech. We have a specific target of 25 million from our venture fund that will specifically target intentional companies that are focused on women empowerment in those sectors. So I just wanted to mention that.
Right? Justice?
Yeah, I think technology has changed in law completely. As we knew it, we all remember courtrooms with large swathes of paper and files and, the judge being drowned amongst all that. It's completely changed. If you come to, for example, a courtroom where I'm sitting in Delhi High Court, there's not a single sheet of paper in that room. I work completely on a monitor, and it's all files are digitally scanned. If there are 40 to 50 cases listed in a day in our court, in the evening I get a hard drive full of those files from which I prepare. So technology has completely changed, as Anjali just said. It's horizontal. It's changed the way we live, whether it's lawyers, judges, doctors, engineers, anybody. And I think where it makes a difference is the technology is making, for example, on the national judicial grid, you would be able to access real-time data about filings, disposals, pendencies across the country, 600 districts, 26 high courts, 1 Supreme Court on the national judicial grid. So that's the kind of massive data that we are looking at. And law is not far from technology. It has really affected the way law is practiced. One thing as far as women are concerned is, for women who aspire to be lawyers or who may be clients, who may be having commercial disputes in courts, real-time orders are available manually online. You can just look at them. You can see which case is being heard in a particular court by the digital display boards which are there, accessible online on your smartphones. There are apps which tell you, if you put up your particular case, mark it, they'll send you reminders of when your case is listed on a particular day and what happened on that day. So technology has, I mean, it's very unusual for a country like India. The perception is completely to the opposite, that we are not using technology as much in law. But I must say that the National Judicial Grid has made all this possible. And this is a very, very ambitious venture of the judiciary to make law and legal information accessible to the common man and woman, I may say so.
Yes, and Justice, I think you're right. You know, the digital world enables very small sort of craft, what you call them, you know, small cottage industries to really scale. Angela, you're talking about scale. Recently, DBS partnered with TISS, the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and we came across a group of Muslim women in Lucknow who were skilled in, it was a dying form of embroidery. And we said, wow, this is a very unique skill. It's a beautiful outcome, but nobody knows about it, right? So we put some money behind them, help them with their social media, their marketing videos, and then, whoa, you know, suddenly it becomes a much larger, help them with the logistics, and you can do everything now through technology. They now have a marketplace, they now have a sustainable livelihood, and hopefully they can scale with some luck, right? Do you want to comment on how technology could help?
So, I mean, during most of my journey, I didn't have this great advantage of technology. Most of my business was built on word of mouth. So no matter what the technologies, the amazing technology that's available today, I think it's still important that whatever you're selling or whatever you're promoting still carries the impact for people to talk about it and spread it through word of mouth as well, even today. And also where you can actually communicate through this amazing, especially all the social media, you know, sort of messages besides just, you know, a product or just what your company is about, but more something that can bring social change and be very helpful to many, like, you know, can have positive change for many lives. I think that's really important as well. And that's what I use, you know, social media a lot for now, is for my cause of you know, getting people to change how they think about animals, about the environment, about and I also use it to you know, through my journey, I hope I can influence many more women, many more young girls, and I see today that so many more young girls like to follow what I do, or like or want to be, or know that they can be who they want to be. Because I think that's what's really important, is to lead the change and to show that it's possible. And you know, that's what I try to do as well, even today, is to encourage more and more women and young girls to know that it is possible to do what you want to do, as long as the opportunities are there and for you. I think that in a country like Sri Lanka, what we're missing is a lack of equal opportunity for all women. There are many women who don't have the opportunity of access to good education, of access to, you know, mentoring, of access to funding. So those are the areas that really need to improve overall. And but you know, the opportunities are really endless.
So do you think we need to overcompensate? Because I wanted to ask about challenges. So you've got leveler, education as a leveler, technology as a leveler, but yet these, you know, we haven't solved, you know, the problems for women entrepreneurs. And before we came in, we discussed that there isn't really a strong bias, at least in South or Southeast Asia, right? I was looking at the stats. ASEAN has a lot of women entrepreneurs. In Philippines alone, it's the highest percentage. 69% of firms had female participation and ownership. Thailand at 64%, Vietnam at 51%. So these are high women ownership, you know, percentages. And in ASEAN alone, 61.3 million women own and operate their own businesses. These numbers are not trivial, they're significant. But yet I'm hearing, you know, it's not perfect. Governments need to play a role. There are challenges. Can any of you opine on what are the challenges and what, you know, we need to do collectively, or is it the role of government?
So in Sri Lanka, the first female prime minister in the world was from Sri Lanka.
Yes.
We also had a female president. So it is possible for women. It's not that women are looked down, you know, down upon. I mean, in certain instances, yes, but it is possible. The opportunity is there. It's just that, like I said, it's the lack of infrastructure for them to access. It's the lack of education. That is really the most important thing, and I think the governments have to play a really strong role in that, in providing that support, because otherwise it's very, I mean, I have seen it. I've traveled to a lot of villages. I've met a lot of people. There's so many talented women out there, but they just don't have that opportunity to, you know, to reach the funding or the somebody who will guide them or who give them advice on finance, or because I as well started with no education on business, on finance, on marketing, on HR. But, you know, I did have access to, my brother was involved in finance, so I could get advice from him and different, but there are a lot of women who don't have that access, and that's really,
so policy
really,
needs to be more deliberate in bringing this help and support.
There was one policy I wanted to mention here. There, you know, a large number of engineers and chemistry honors, physics honors, women who've studied, kind of move out of their careers because of children, and they want to bring up their children, give them education. So there was a very interesting program by the Department of Science and Technology in India, where they gave the opportunity to 100 women, science background women, to be trained in patent drafting. And this is a continuous program by the Department of Science and Technology, has been a very successful program, and each of those 100 women got a job when they left that program. It's a 6-month program which is meant for women, and only 1 month is actually a classroom program. And at the end of it, they could sit at home, draft patents, and email it to the law firms who were employing them.
And their work was good?
The work was very good because they all had the basic educational qualifications. So they only needed training. So this is tapping of a potential which is completely sublime, you know, suppressed, because they are all housemakers and housewives who have not worked at all, and they were given the opportunity. And I think these kind of schemes need to really be increased by numbers. They should scale up these schemes, and that will help the untapped potential to actually contribute and make them more self-sustained, I think.
You're absolutely right. How to tap that untapped potential. And, you know, there are a lot of great women's minds right now who are otherwise preoccupied with home and family, but when the kids are at school, it's a resource that smart companies should tap on. I once met a law firm, a senior male law firm partner who said, I love it when my women partners have children and work from home. I'm like, why? He said, because I get the full input and I only pay half. Which is rather cheeky. But, you know, I think it does speak to the fact that, you know, women working from home, the outcomes are no worse than the woman who's in the workplace.
Can you acknowledge he was only paying them 80 cents on the dollar to begin with?
Well, these are all
The wage
policies that
disparity,
we need
isn't
to,
it? Yes.
so therefore we need to be more deliberate. I think corporations need to be more deliberate in what they do.
My mic
Not
is
your
on.
mic is on.
So actually that's one way that women should leverage the digital channel a little bit more, and employers should leverage it more. I actually have 2 points to make on this. One is the participation of women in the workforce. And we talk a lot about what happens and why there are not more women in leadership roles and so on and so forth. It's because we actually, even if we start right, let's say even if we start with 25, 30, up to 40% participation at the entry level, there is a massive drop off in the middle. Because the years when everyone is building their career, women are also building their families. And whether we like it or not, women do play a greater role. That's the sort of the social construct in having and raising children. Remember, biologically, the only thing a woman does that a man cannot do is bear the child. But socially, she ends up doing a whole lot more. So that leaky pipeline really has to be fixed, and that will require 4 things. One is the individual,
And she really has to want it, because if she doesn't want it, nobody else can make it happen for her. It's hard work, tough choices, she has to want it. Second is the family, it's an enabling family and social infrastructure. The third is the employer. And more companies around the world, including in India and Southeast Asia and Asia, are actually putting in place family-friendly policies. I think more men and women really have to take advantage of those. So you really can't say that the employer is not supportive. The employers are supportive. Fourth is the state. The state is a very important actor in this play. Maternity policies, wage parity policies, sexual harassment policies in the workplace, enforcement of law. I think all of that is the role of the state, and the state has to step up, which it is. So that's my one piece on more participation of women in the workforce. But the second one, and Sushan, you shared some very interesting statistics, which is about, there's a large number of women-owned enterprises, but if you look at the market cap of these economies, you look at the total revenue base of these economies, how much of that is actually led by women? And so somewhere, women may start enterprises. Do they dream big enough? Do they want to create really scaled enterprises out of that? Or are they happy working with small, mid-sized enterprises? And why is that? I think that is something that needs deliberation.
Yeah. I remember in my last organization when I was head of diversity, and there were so few women MDs in this American bank, we had to make deliberate policies to make sure the women who fall off don't fall off. Yeah. And that meant making sure the women in the middle had opportunities to meet a lot of the men on top who made those crucial career-moving decisions for these women in the middle. And I had to really orchestrate a scenario where they had to meet and they couldn't leave for another meeting. So, you know, in Singapore, we have this flyer. You know, you step into the flyer and it moves and you can't get off. Yeah. Yeah. So I decided to book the flyer.
What a great idea.
Put them in, and then for 45 minutes, there's nothing to do but to talk to each other and get to know each other, right? It's a bit like going on a boat, and then you're stuck. You can't jump off, right? So, and it's to create those deliberate opportunities where, listen, this is a high potential lady. You don't know her. She works in a different department, but she's got great potential. Please talk to her, right? So I guess if we're women leaders in the room or male leaders in the room, we need to create those opportunities for the women in the middle to be able to have the opportunity to go upwards, right? So they'll play it forward. Anyone wants to share? I'm going to open up to the audience in a minute, but I wanted to see if anyone else here on the panel wanted to share any healthcare?
Point on mentoring.
Mentoring. Okay, let's talk about health and we'll go back to mentoring. Justice.
This anecdote that you said you wanted us to give, I wanted to mention this very specifically because this conference, one of the main topics is health sciences. And I had this great opportunity to, as a lawyer, represent in a cancer drug case in the Supreme Court.
I saw that. Glivec.
And in this particular case, when I was doing this case, I want to narrate this because I really think that this is one area where all women need to put our heads together. This case would give me sleepless nights because this was about whether the patent should be granted for this cancer drug or not. And the issue at the end of that case was, I remember being, whenever I went to a social party or something, housemakers, women in kitty parties, they would walk up to me. And the case brought affordable healthcare versus patenting to its complete hilt in India. And everybody discussed patent law as though it's kind of their expertise. So while we debate medicines, etc., the most interesting thing that I want to say as a lawyer in my entire career was, is there a way that we can all contribute together to make sure that the world doesn't miss the affordable healthcare? And for this, we need women, men, corporates, governments, everybody to put their heads together and work on this matter because this is something that's really troubling. I want to give you a very funny situation which had happened. There was a ship which was parked off the United States and it carried generic medicine from India. And it flew the flag of a South African country. It was selling the drug at 10% of the actual price in the US. And this was really scary situation where, US patients were actually sailing up to that boat and buying medicines on that ship. So we need to do something about it. And I think the pharmaceutical industry needs to do something about it. And lastly, I want to say that as women, we should not just worry about what intellectual property we are creating. We should also encourage our children to innovate, our children to think big, our children to create and protect what they are creating.
Excellent. Angela, you want to talk about mentoring?
Absolutely. I think women should grab with both hands and feet and any other appendage, any opportunities to seek mentoring. There is a not unfounded perception that women don't network as well as men do, which is true in my experience. And for various reasons, women don't go off to have a beer at the bar with the guys. They go home to their children and so on. They don't play golf on Sunday mornings. I don't. And trust me, you don't need to play golf to be successful in business. But that said, I think mentoring opportunities are very, very essential. Everybody needs a mentor as you go through, so please grasp it and give it. So we can all mentor each other. It's very hard to say, I'm great. But it's so much easier to say, Sushan's great, Catherine's great. So you have people around you who are positive, who say good things about you, and you pay it back as well. Final piece is making a big plug for the men. I absolutely celebrate all the men in my life, and I'm sure you have men in your life. I think men have played a tremendous role in the advancement of women, and we cannot talk about diversity and inclusion in a group of, a bunch of women talking to another bunch of women. If you want solutions, it really has to be inclusive. We say 50% of the world is women, but guess what? The other 50% is men. And men have proved to be great champions and mentors and sponsors of a lot of us in our generation who have reached leadership roles.
Oh, I'm lucky. My boss is
Absolutely.
a male, and very, very supportive of women. He's surrounded by women and tells everyone that he just has to sit back and look pretty. But I have a reverse mentor, and it's a guy, a much younger guy, and he teaches me how to code. So why not, right?
Yeah.
You can have mentors who are younger, older, all have different skills.
That's my 16-year-old son who says, but mom, I feel very sorry for you because you started programming at a time when it wasn't fun. For him, coding is fun, and for me, I hated coding.
Well done. Okay, shall we open up to the audience? We want to seek some audience participation. If you have any questions, comments to make, yes, please. Go ahead.
Lovely insights, ladies. Thank you so much for that. My name is Hema. I am actually in the business of manufacturing. I came into manufacturing consciously, and we make battery-operated cycles and scooters out of our facilities in Coimbatore. We have 2 factories. Now, I have just gone through whatever you're saying in different intensities and proportions, and here is one entrepreneur that will never give up, right? So we've just moved on into many, many aspects. My question to you, Sushan, and particularly others, perhaps if you have some answer, is that, see, one of the challenges that we have is that in manufacturing, raising capital is very tough, okay? Yeah. Because there are monies available, and any investor, even if I will go for my investment where it can scale up 10 times or 5 times or whatever it is, right? But manufacturing takes a much longer time. So I wanted to ask Sushan, is DBS doing anything specific, okay, to help women entrepreneurs like this? I'm actually lived in Singapore for 16 years, so I exactly understand the sentiments, what's happening there. But I thought that some women-specific fund to help, in this, unconventional businesses, not the straightforward businesses, the tough journey that we take through, where if it's supported, I think it will be very nice. So if you have any insights, perhaps you could share.
Well, now that we've done the Women's Livelihood Bond, and it was bloody hard to do as well. It wasn't easy. I was sharing with Catherine that it took us 2 tries. First time we failed. Second time we're like, okay, die, must try again. So we tried, and then we succeeded. I put my own money in. I always believe that you put your money where your mouth is. Haven't thought about a support women business specific debt, to be honest, but why not? I mean, we did one bond specifically because we felt that that was a game changer and would make huge social impact. But why not? I mean, but the new world of digital finance means a lot of companies that hitherto found it hard to get a bank loan or reach financial capital markets because they were too advanced, can do so. You know, the world of ICOs now, you've got these ICOs, you can use blockchain now to do small fundraising, crowdsourcing. There's a company called Funderbeam, F-U-N-D-L, started by an Estonian lady, and one of her co-founders is Jan Tallinn, who was the engineer behind Skype. And they help small startups, a lot of them started by women, who want to raise just a few $1 million, and then they use the blockchain technology to do it. It's for early stage and so
you know, the early
Series A,
stage,
B,
we have
and
kind
C.
of moved up the value chain. You know, Mr. Ratan Tata, Chris Gopalakrishnan, they're all investors in my company. So I've gotten the HNIs already into that board. Now I'm looking to transition from this HNI to a VC or a PE, right? That's the challenge I'm facing through, and it's very, very tough because we've got 150 members and 30% of our workforce are women. So largely women-run manufacturing companies. So we want to make the difference, and we want to ensure, that, you know.
Okay, we are already interested, and there are some private equity people in the room that I know, and they can certainly come and talk to you later. So thank you for sharing. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. Anyone else want to make any comments, questions? Yes, please. I think we can hear you, yeah. Yeah.
So this is for Ms. Kaufman and Anjali Bansal. Thanks. Better? Yes. So my question is, in the spirit of mentorship and being a woman playing what used to be a man's game, especially here in South Asia, what tactics or approaches have you seen working where women do well in networking, in pitching their companies for investment? You know, is it the taking the man's tactic, being incredibly confident? What do you see that's been good traits, good approaches to do so and have success? Yes, also from you.
Go, Tara. Yeah. How did you raise your first? Well, we know how you raised your first $100, but what about your first $1 million?
Well, I mean, first of all, I must tell you that when I started, which was 27 years ago, and for many, many, many years, I never ever thought of myself as a woman in business or as anything to do with as a woman. I just did what I had to do, and I felt absolutely no barriers whatsoever to to go to a bank, to go to a corporate, to go to anyone and ask for things. I don't know, maybe it wasn't spoken about that much then, or I don't know why it never was an issue for me.
Yeah,
and
it's true. Yeah.
And so even I had to list my company, and then it was actually oversubscribed by 74 times.
Wow.
And even then, I didn't realize I was the only woman as well. That came up later with the news articles and all that. And when I had to go to this board it was for parks in Malaysia, and they were all wonderful. Not even for a moment did I have to think, oh my gosh, I'm going to meet all these men, and how am I going to pitch it? And so what I'm trying to say is, I mean, yes, there are a lot of barriers, and there are a lot of issues where women don't have opportunities and all that. But I think also that in the day-to-day, like it's spoken about so much, and it's so much pressure is put on that, like you're a woman. Oh my gosh, I'm a woman. What am I going to do? How will they react to me? That sort of thing. And it actually makes some women, I feel, start on a negative, and because they're so doubtful about themselves, and they're so fearful of going and meeting the man, or meeting a group of men, or and going and pitching their company. So I think it's important to understand that. I'm saying that also because I recently, about a month ago, a girl came and met me, and she's just started a company, and it's quite a good company, jewelry or something. And she wanted me to answer some of her questions and support her and guide her. And if she asked me 20 questions, about 17 of them were about men. And I felt it was like creating such a barrier for her to move forward with what she was doing, because she was always, all her questions were about how did you handle a man, what did the men say, don't you feel when you go to that they look at you differently, how do you dress when you go to so
a lot of it is your own mental barrier that you have to overcome first.
I think
right?
so, and
yeah.
so but obviously the challenges are there. So I think don't make it you have to ensure that it doesn't put you on a negative. And you need to just I think it's your own strength that you need to have, and to really do what you want to do. And when you're strong and when you're confident, I mean, most men can't really do anything
How
negative.
can they not support you?
Yeah, because they want to support you. So
Catherine, you want to
that's
add
my
anything?
opinion.
Sure, I'll comment.
Yeah.
So I'll have to agree with you. I've never felt like I'm a woman in a man's world. I've always felt like I'm a young person, not so much anymore. But
You still look young, don't worry.
Oh, thank you. Before I was at OPIC, I was a partner in a venture capital firm. And in that role, in one of our portfolio projects, I had to raise $75 million from high net worth individuals. I was in Texas for that. And I would say that the characteristic that was required to do that was grit. And I think that's the same for men and women. I will speak from my own experience that there were some meetings that I would take, and I could tell that that gentleman looked at me and saw a woman. And I think probably men have an experience that's similar. I don't quite know what it is, but you have good meetings and bad meetings, and after every meeting you have to pick yourself up and say, I'm going to keep going, and I think that's the most important thing you can do.
Angeli?
Absolutely agree with everything that's been said. I think first of all, you have to look, if you want the world to be gender blind, you've got to start with being gender blind and say, I've got a job to do. It doesn't matter, the job doesn't care whether you're male or female.
And
the job needs to get done.
A computer doesn't care.
A computer doesn't care. Job doesn't care.
AI doesn't care.
Investors don't care. So I think we have to first get past our own sense of identity. That's one. Two is be authentic. You don't have to be somebody else. There's no point in being somebody else. Be yourself, and some will work, some won't work. Entrepreneurship is all around the grit, picking yourself up and moving forward. And I think finally it's just getting on with stuff, actually.
Yeah, just get on with it.
Yeah, just get on with stuff and get it done.
But I guess you're right. I mean, there will be instances that you go in and it might be awkward. I remember being a 25-year-old, and it was right after the first Gulf War in the Middle East, and I was asked to go to one particular Middle East country to try and get a sovereign wealth fund there to do a lot more business with us. And my job at the time was warrant and convertible bond arbitrage. So walking in, Tan Sushan looks like a man's name, right? So when I walked into the room, they were all Arab men, and they expected a man. And I walked in and I could see the collective. So I think they're going to either go backwards and collapse or forwards and collapse. Nonetheless, the reaction was not a good one. But when I sat down and I realized, wow, it was like talking to a wall at first. Yeah. And in the end I said, listen, this meeting is not going to go anywhere. And I feel that maybe it's because at the time I was very young. I was 24 or 5. I'm Asian, I said, I tell you what, why don't you give me a warrant arbitrage model to do for you. You give me all the parameters, I'll do it for you. And then this is not an issue anymore. So they're like, oh, okay. And then they gave me, and I gave them all the financial answers. They're like, oh, actually, she does know her job. Okay, so is it not an issue anymore? I said, because it's an issue, then I will leave. I don't waste your time, you don't waste my time. But if it's not an issue, you let me stay, we do our job. Then they said, stay. So I stayed, and we got the job done. And then, at the end of it, they said, show us your itinerary. I said, why? They said, because you're going to have the same problem in the next 5 meetings. We make the call now to help you for the next 5 meetings.
Fantastic.
So kind, right? So I think, just get the job done, Angeli, as you said.
Actually, I have a similar story.
Go.
Yeah. My first job in business was with McKinsey in New York. Now, McKinsey is a fabulous firm because it's completely meritocratic. They don't care whether you're man, woman. You need to get the job done, right? I did FIG, financial institutions. So all my clients were men, for the most part. My teams were men. And it was wonderful because nobody gave a dash about whether you're man or woman, as long as you get the job done. And it trains you so well. And I was frequently and almost always in meetings where everybody else was male, and you never feel this way or that way, and you get on with it.
Yeah, just get on with it.
The profession of law is slightly different. It is a male-dominated profession. And in fact, when I joined law and started practicing as a lawyer, as a junior to one of the well-known lawyers, they wouldn't expect me to argue a case when I went up in front. They would say, oh, you want an adjournment? The minute they see a girl. You want a Passover? You want an adjournment? Where's your senior? And then I would say, no, I'm ready to argue. And so this continued even till I became a Queen's Counsel.
Really?
Yes.
They would assume you wanted an adjournment?
No,
even
and
if
they wouldn't, like for a man who's opposing you, you would call my learned friend. Whereas when a woman is opposing you, they would say, oh, she is saying this. So it's very subtle, but there is a difference. And they don't do it deliberately, but it's very, very subtle and it's there. But you just have to ignore, stand your stead, and go ahead, and then they listen to you.
Get the job done.
That's it.
But this is not to say that biases don't exist, by the way, because I think as Justice mentioned, this is a well-known phenomenon. It's been recorded, it's been written about in boardrooms and even leadership meetings in big companies or small companies, where if it's an idea that is presented by a woman, it doesn't always get picked up. And the same thing could be heard and repeated by somebody, a man around the table, and it will be said, oh, that's a great idea. So there is something in the way maybe we are socialized as people are raised and grow up in families where they don't hear fully and they don't acknowledge. So one trick that actually women have started using in boards particularly is or in leadership meetings, is if you have a female colleague that presents an idea, it is incumbent upon you to say, great idea. And say, as Catherine mentioned, and attribute it to her, because women don't always get credit for their ideas in large meetings.
But Anjali,
good idea. And always make sure the women speak, right?
Yeah.
Ask the women the meeting to speak up.
Absolutely. And we may be peers and colleagues in a board meeting, but if somebody else has made a suggestion, we'll say, Sushant's great suggestion.
Thank you.
By name.
Okay, that I think is a good idea. Because it doesn't happen even in law even now. There is a problem. I think men pick up women's ideas and encourage it more than the women in a leadership position.
I will call you
But
my
they don't
learned
give
friend.
attribute.
You're
They
my
don't
learned
attribute those ideas to their
Yeah.
female colleagues always.
Correct.
So, yeah. Any other comments from the floor? Oh, a few here. Go ahead. See, that's typical, right? Oh, you go first, you go first. Whereas men would be like, no, me first.
Yes, correct.
I'm just joking. Not all men are like that. Okay, it's working.
Hello everyone, I'm Pavitra from grade 11. I'm a budding entrepreneur.
Wow.
So,
Yay!
so I manufacture sanitary napkins which is of herbal. So I face a very big challenge, that is, it is something which is related to female, and when I talk about this to people, they doesn't want to listen to it. They feel like it is some personal matter, don't talk about it. People feel like that the problem is only within one person, but it is a problem faced by all the women all over the world, but they feel like as though I only have it, so I don't want to show that to people. So they don't want to express it, and they do not know the ill effects of the plastic products. So when I talk about it, people say like, being a girl, why are you talking about this? Go sit in your home, go do some other work. So this is a kind of reply we get, and when we work in team also, actually we are targeting for rural India. So when we go to that places, people are talking like, how can you talk this in public? How are your parents permitting this? So this is the kind of question they ask. So how shall I overcome all those things?
Social norms, right? That need to be changed.
You need
You
to
need a
get
champion.
sanitary napkin vending machines put up like cola vending machines everywhere in the country.
But you get them at ladies' loos now, right?
You do. In fact, so one of the most brand managers, by the way, for Stay Free and so on, are men. And I've had amazing conversations with some of them, one of whom is actually a colleague on another board of mine that I serve on. And he says that when he started, he was a young brand manager responsible for the Stay Free brand. And initially it was very awkward, and then he would start having these conversations with women about, how they go through the process and does it work, not work, and initially very, very awkward. And then suddenly they would say, oh my God, it's so wonderful to be able to talk to you. It's like talking to a woman. So that happens. So please persevere, please continue.
You probably need a champion.
You need a champion.
Yeah.
I'm happy to connect you with
Yes.
this colleague of mine.
So we'll help
Thank you so
to
much.
find, you need a sort of, some champions to help you with your cause.
And I would actually wanted to add upon, one of my friend is from Coimbatore. Do you know Arunachalam Prakasham? He's from Coimbatore, right? So he's a person, he manufactures sanitary napkins which is given in very affordable price. So when we talk about that person, because he's an inspiring personality, so we tend to inspire people by quoting that person. But people say like, how can a man talk about this? So again, people go on talk like this, so we feel like how could we reach more people? So that's what I wanted to ask, like how can I reach out the rural
Social
people?
media.
Social media.
Use social media. That's your big tool. That's your big weapon.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, the lady on the left.
Hi. So I just graduated from college in May. I studied politics. And I tend to be what people have called me overcritical, which first is important because I have never heard that to any of my male classmates. Another thing that people have called me is that I see race everywhere. And another thing people have told me is that I see gender everywhere. And recently we mentioned that we should be gender blindness, that we should have racial blindness, but I actually disagree with that. I would like to say that first, when there is a race, we can be blind because everyone is starting at the same point. But when we think about woman and male, we're not starting at the same point. So I don't think we should be blind. But that's my first point, and the second point is that when I was studying politics, and that might have happened to other people, all my books were about males. All the books I was reading were written by males. All the stories were about males. And I actually dream of becoming a lawyer, and I actually want to become a cybersecurity lawyer. So that's a big dream. So I want to ask you, how do you create this sisterhood in your work environment? In the books that you read, in the way that you talk to women, in the way that you promote women. I'm highly interested in creating sisterhood because to some extent we have even learned to shame each other. Your clothes are too short, your clothes are too long. You're wearing a hijab, why are you not covering your hair? Your skin is too light, your skin is actually too skinny. You are too skinny, you are too fat. So I'm highly interested in getting to know how powerful women like you are using your power to create a more welcoming environment for women.
So I can share my story. 16 years ago, I started something called the Financial Women's Association. I just had my second kid and decided that, like Anjali said, we just didn't have time to go and play golf, go to the bar after work, network, da-di-da. So, but we wanted to create a sisterhood, and I felt that the women in finance needed somewhere to mentor each other, help each other with the career moves, be a kind of a personal board of directors, if you will, that you can get sort of free objective advice from. It turned out also to be a great headhunting tool for me later on, but that's a separate story. But anyway, so I was very scared because I just had another baby. I was so tired, but you know, it was the women around me who were younger than me that said, Sushan, if you do it, we'll support you. Like, you swear. So I got 15 swears from 15 women who said, we swear we'll help you. So all of us just did it. And we decided to do it like, we'll rotate the presidency. No one takes the presidency for more than 2 years. So then you keep passing the buck, right? So as president, as founding president, it was my job, and I held the torch, and then everybody put me on the spotlight. So if it was good, it was bad, I took the hit, or I took the praise. Then I passed the torch to the next woman, and every woman that got the torch subsequently has brought it to greater and greater and greater heights. It's now this huge organization. I have nothing to do with it. I cannot take any credit for its success, but I'm very happy to see that how many women it's mentored, how many careers it's changed. The UN head of Asia was a former president. You know, all the ex-presidents of this organization have gone on to bigger, better things. And so it can happen, but someone needs to start it. And they can't start it alone. So you just need to get that 15 swears, right? Everyone's going to help you. Get a group of girls together, you do it. That's my own personal anecdote.
Could I?
Please. Catherine.
Thank you. So this is not something that I've done personally, but first of all, I never worked with women. I never worked with one woman. I never pitched one woman in my previous career. At OPIC, we have a great representation of really impressive women, and I've said to my husband, I'm having so much fun working with these women. I feel like I'm going to get in trouble or something, because it's just such a joy to actually work with women. But I think I mentioned grit earlier, and for for me, it was just going back at it when I thought it was going to be difficult. But I think the harder challenge for women is when they are in childbearing years and when they have children. I can imagine that if I had a difficult time, I would choose being with my family over getting that muster to go back to the office. And I think that's a very real choice that women make because they care about their families and it's difficult. So I've asked some of my coworkers that do have children how they've managed it. And I think just through those conversations, they were inspired to form their own Mothers at OPIC group. And I came back from a trip and I had 2 women on my calendar and they came in and they said, Katie, here are the policies at OPIC for mothers. Here's what would have been better. And we've created this network and now we're all meeting once a month and we're making sure we're A, taking advantage of the policies that exist, but B, we're going to form a network that is going to push this organization to be more flexible and better. And it was the most inspiring thing that's happened to me since I've been at OPIC, just that these women were able to move the organization to be better for mothers and more flexible.
Okay. So with that, I have to draw this session to a close. Thank you for your active participation and thank you for your support. Thank you to my wonderful 4 panelists, most of all.
Thank you all.